Right, so today's April 30th, 2021, and we're joined today again with Kevin, and we'll start the discussion. What do we want to talk about today in terms of topics?
I wanted to talk about, we had some interesting conversations last time, and I kind of, especially like the religion one and stuff. I wanted to ask you also about, where you're going with your work and the stuff you're doing and what your kind of end game is. I sort of asked it before, but I wanted to know what happens. I watched one of your videos where you were saying, if you expose EcoHealth and the, leak from the Wuhan lab or otherwise bioweapon kind of stuff. If it is all exposed, where do you go from there? You kind of said, well, then your job's over, but I can't believe it because you have such a following. And I'm thinking in terms of what is the aim? Okay, imagine this. Imagine it is all common knowledge that it was, came from China. China denies it. The rest of the world knows the truth. What happens then? What's the end game after that?
It's a big question. I don't know. We're in unknowns here, and I've lost your web page. Where did it go? Hello? Did it kick me out? I think it kicked. Oh, there's two of me now. Okay, how do I get rid of one?
Yeah, just close the tab with one, yeah.
Okay, I got it. It's a really difficult question, Hugh, because we haven't been at this point in generations. The closest approximation that I could think of is the lead up to the Second World War. Even in the Cold War, I don't think there was. Well, I guess you could look at the Bay of Pigs incident, but up to now, I don't think there was a time where people could actively track what the technocrats and bureaucrats were actively trying to push, and as a consequence, we're able to disrupt their narrative. We're seeing them stumble, and we're seeing them resort to counter narratives, and this all gets pumped into real-time analytics, and who knows what type of computational wargaming they have running, and either way they win, right? They win if we went down the first route, which was to convince everyone that we were going to have spillover disease after spillover disease, and we had to hide away from nature, right? That, I think that was there's a lot of overlapping evidence which would appear that was where they were heading for. That's why there'd been the push with environmentalism. Environmentalism is linked intrinsically to this idea of pathogen spillover, and with pathogen spillover, it's real enough that you can spook a good proportion, and rightly so, a good proportion of the population into compliance. I don't know why they triggered it when they did. It seems to have come off as sloppy. Maybe, I don't know. We can only guess at the variables that were at play. But what we are seeing is, there's, I forget the name, Admiral Byrd. He defined this concept of being in the OODA loop, where you, once you get inside what that other person is doing, you can anticipate what they're doing because you're a move ahead. And it might have just been hubris on their part to just think that they can pull off this, I don't know, well, it's not even a coup d'etat, this paradigm shift.
Yeah, I mean, it has all the elements of 9/11. It's like a psyops.
Yeah, and look, it's 20 years since 9/11. I see 9/11 and this as intrinsically linked. Hang on, I just need to respond to something. Come here, you. The shaping of human beings, the Western populace has a multi-generational component embedded into it. We can see that now, you know, hindsight being 2020, and you can sort of see how things have jockeyed left and right, and they want to establish a new order. I think that order involves bringing the United States down to some degree, whether that's through subversion on the ground. To, hey big boy, can you go watch Daddy's computer? Let Daddy speak for a little bit. Can you do that? If you're quiet, as long as you're not gibbering to Eddie-chan, okay, you can play. Just be quiet, okay? No, you want to go? Oh, sorry about that. And look, like I said, I've been very fortunate to team up with Brendan O'Connell. He's put many years work and has received a lot of help from intelligence agencies. I would say grey hats, white hats, maybe, that have outlined what seems to be the stripping of the technology edge that United States had, that they thought they had. That, you know, the idea of the pan-Eurasian supercontinent, I think, is a important one that we have to take into account. And the masters, at whatever level you think they operate, are just getting ready to slice and carve everything up. Everything we can see, nothing works right now. Show me an institution that's working like it's supposed to work. Show me something that's not corrupt. Show me something that has been consistent over the last 12 months, except corruption and except people engaging in cover your ass type behavior. I haven't said, there's very little that I can see of. Individuals, yes. Institutions, not so much. And I think that it's their game, right? It's their monopoly, right? And we're the cattle on the board that's going to get shunted around and moved around and forced to pay rent or no rent, depending on who you want to believe. And everything will be free and we'll be happy, but we'll own nothing, right? That seems like a pretty good summation of the current set of circumstances. Now, if it's true that there has been a wholesale infiltration into the American tech sector such that it's been offloaded to Israel. Israel just announced that their next gen, or Intel's next gen chip making plant is going to be in Haifa, Israel, and it's 2,000 jobs for Israel and the next, the new iterations of the Intel chips, which we know are all backdoored now. And as Brendan O'Connell is wont to say, cyber is the real power. Cyber is how they control the narratives, and they're so good at everything right now that they can just switch on and off people's feeds. That people who are just gibbering nonsense get amplified because it helps their strategic aims. People who are speaking somewhat cogently don't get to hear or see the light of day, and that's fine. That's it's going to be. I don't think there's anything that you can change about that. The critical factor is to get through what it is that they're going to do. Now, we know that that involves next generation surveillance. Okay, they're going to tie that to a vaccine, and it comes down to how you are going to adapt your life around that. What are you going to be prepared to give up, right? Because we've all got to do passport applications at some point. We've all got to do something that interfaces with that machine, which says, well, if you don't have it, you know, the necessary documents, be it a card, be it a QR code on your phone, be it something, right? Then services will just be restricted to you to the nth degree. That's what I see happening, and then it's people's choice how much they feel they need to be there. And we've seen it took a year to break the West, right, through inconvenience, because people couldn't go to the shops.
So who is the we that is doing this?
I look at oligarch level power. These are people, if you're a billionaire, are you in the club? Probably not. I don't know what the threshold is. Certainly, if you're a millionaire, you're just going to be down here with the rest of us schlubs. You might just have a bit more of a luxurious existence. But they're looking to carve up and reshape the way the world works. It's obvious, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. How cerebral do you think it is? Do you think these people sit down maliciously? What's their character and mindset? Are they evil, more ha 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 type of thing, or are they just doing what they think is good?
I think it's dispassionate clinical intervention to make sure that they hold on to power and money and advantage, the same as it's always been.
So that's psychopathy.
I'm sorry.
So that's psychopathy.
Is it? I mean, I want my surgeon to be like that if he's opened me up. There's a you've got, of course, it's a spectrum, but look, you can live like you're in an anarchist dream where there's no law, there's no order, and you just rely on the non-aggression principle, etc. But I absolutely assure you, you'll end up with slave markets and it being like Tripoli after the NATO forces have
but what you answering the question to you about who are they, the oligarchs, and the characteristics that you were studying were describing were ones of psychopathy. The people
I don't know, is it though? Because you're just looking at am I a psychopath when I look at the monkey colony and I'm saying, okay, I've got this study. No, but I have a dispassionate side that says I need to make an intervention in order to complete this task. I think that those people look at it in the same way, and they believe exactly what it is that they're doing. And
so white man's burden kind of thing.
Yeah. But this time it's rainbow colored and comes with the jingle bells of diversity culture with all its trappings. That's because that's been the subversion mechanism. The whole point was to break down the nation states, get everything as interconnected as possible, tilt axes of power around. Now they've inflated everything so that, well, look, if we're in a situation where people struggle, to get homes, to afford homes in a lot of the Western countries because the systems have been so skewed, right? And whether it was the Fannie Mae debacle in 2008 or what's happening now, which is the modern incarnation of the Federal Reserve, BlackRock, going around and just realizing that they can keep inflating property assets all the time, and so they're going in and buying houses and property and anything that they think that they can move to get the money flowing through it's just investment capital and pension funds, and all those financial instruments need to keep moving. And what are they aiming for? Well, there's a very interesting lady. You should try and speak to her, Alison McDowell. She's got a website called Cogs in the Gears, and she talks about how they're going to commoditize poverty through impact goals on. And this is all just part of the data collection, etc. And you will be the corporations are coming in to say that they've got the solution to the decaying side of public
what's like social infrastructure, you know.
And there's a part of me that, look, privatizing your telecoms, yeah, that's probably not such a bad idea. Privatizing your schools and all your hospitals and your critical infrastructure, and you've got foreign entities coming in and owning and doing whatever, that's I fail to see that as a sustainable solution, because those companies are still geared towards maximum profit in the maximum amount of time. And I don't care how much they wrap it up in the idea that they've got this concept of stakeholder capitalism. That's PR for the plebs, right? It's about instantiating these new systems, nudging people along into zones, controlled zones, keeping them out of nature. And like I say, we could see their plan, like I said, especially if you look back just in retrospect over the last year, and you could see how they were coordinated with it. And we can take the molecular signatures and we say, well, something was going on in September, October, could have been even earlier. Suddenly we get this expansion of mutations occurring in Wuhan, etc. But the whole point of that was to hammer home to people, this was supposed to be bats interacting with human beings, and they were supposed to, you know, they had a program that was going to detect it. And this is why I just think there might have just been something approximating just slack standards that just, you know, they were building up towards this. Something's happened in that lab.
No, but in terms of who's behind it all is the more interesting question. So okay, so can I propose this to you? So I mean, things like hidden cabals and secret societies and cults and that have been a lifelong interest of mine. And I've been fascinated. I mean, you can clearly see, like you say, that there are people behind the curtain. And I've been looking for them for my whole life. I've actually found them, and I've associated with them. And this is what I would report back. And I tell people about, you know, the conspiracy that everybody's got a, you know, pointed hat and they're doing satanic rituals in some doggram. I'm sure there are some people that do that. I'm pretty damn certain of that. That's not really all what it's about. The skull and bones kind of thing is a kind of fraternity and mindset. And the conclusion I came to, I didn't ever get into one of these things, but I almost made it into you know, the Aspen Institute and stuff like that. I was almost introduced into that. And I got to know all those kind of guys. And this is what I can tell you is the guys behind the curtain. Is, can you imagine, so for a moment, that this whole thing that they're doing, unifying the planet, this one world and one world order, is benign? Is that they're not evil in the sense that they, you know, kind of a Bond villain type evil. is these guys genuinely are on a different plane. The way they talk and coordinate is reminds me very much of an emergent intelligence. So the kind of thing I want to propose to you is that the whole world has been a kind of first order kind of intelligence, and that's largely kind of like, you know, Adam Smith and Hobbes's Leviathan and everybody be selfish. And then, you know, Adam Smith said, well, we have this you know, invisible hand, which is what we'd now call, you know, emergent intelligence. But in terms of that emergent intelligence, what I propose to you is that we are changing as a species. We're becoming a superorganism. And those guys are kind of ahead of the pack because they are working from the intelligence level of the superorganism. So then guys like us, who kind of, you know, in the middle of this flux and change, so it's basically a big transition into this superorganism. So while we're transitioning, we have our kind of little individual egos, and we see this advancing, you know, super thing that looks like a huge conspiracy. And if you think of it in terms of, say, neurons in a brain, then you would have this kind of semi-functional brain, sort of imagine a kind of an evolving brain that really has autonomous little pieces that don't work as a collective. Then as we're going to get the brain bigger and bigger and evolve, it starts to get collective intelligence and something like human consciousness. And then human consciousness does exactly the same thing on a bigger layer, and all the human brains are really just kind of like neural nodes in a bigger super intelligence. So all these guys are doing is they're working together as nodes in a super network. Now we are in, you know, the kind of legacy nodes or legacy neurons, and we're going, oh no, we're being squeezed out this huge cloud. And you know, we could just drop our egos and merge ourselves. We could go over to the dark side, and it's a bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But we kind of see this huge body emerging, and we think, oh no, individual freedoms, and it's kind of like, well, we're just these legacy nodes that have kind of had their day. And the thing is to merge yourself into this big, benign superorganism. Kind of very like, you know, the Matrix and unpopular later versions of the Matrix and this kind of superorganism.
But it's dependent on it being benign. I'm not sure we can make that assumption.
Not benign. What you see, this is the thing: is the bit that says it's not benign is the ego bit that's about to go obsolete. So, you know, these guys are saying, you know, it's like it's benign if you're part of the superorganism, and it's malicious if you're just part of the legacy organism that's going to be kind of recycled into the super intelligence.
So, what is it that they need to do to crystallize this new order? Right.
Exactly. Well, crystallize is exactly the right word. If you look at, say, the emergence of a butterfly from a chrysalis, it or something which is right in your bailiwick, and that's, you know, how you evolve a hand, or how you develop a hand from embryogenesis, is it evolves a lot of growth, and it evolves apoptosis, and basically you know, a lot of the cells have to die off as part of the program. And I think that's the way they see it, is a lot of the cells, human beings in this case, now at this level, they would be kind of recycled, enzymes would dissolve them in this kind of necrosis, and then other living parts would emerge to create the superorganism. It's
they can go fuck themselves. Sorry, man. They can go fuck themselves if that's the way that they want to think. Because look, we know where that type of thinking goes, right? We've gone through a lot of philosophical groundwork and legwork to understand the importance of the individual as sovereign, right? And there's that each person has available to them a vast spiritual experience should they decide to tap into it. And I've tended to find that the more spiritual a person is, the less concerned they are about making super organisms and higher intelligences, and rather more concerned about being grounded and part of a well, you know, what makes you think that that system has any advantages over the current system other than them having fiber optic cable? And
okay, we'll take from a psychological point of view. So I would disagree with what you say about the spirituality, because what you're talking about, I think, is spirituality as a sovereign individual. So you're more like the New Testament, the kingdom of heaven is within you. But so now what's happening and what we're evolving to is the kingdom of heaven is without you. So it's without. So it means that to get to heaven, you can't have, you know, millions of billions of sovereign individuals. That's Adam Smith, and it only goes so far. In fact, it's destructive, because we've seen this, you know, what Adam Smith said was the brewer and the baker are selfish. But from their selfishness emerges the invisible hand of the market, which is better for everybody. Well, we've seen that that's only goes so far. It goes as far as capitalism, and we're late stage capitalism. It doesn't work, like you say. You can't privatize everything. It doesn't work when you have selfish competing companies or individuals. Now, the guys that I know that are in these institutes, and the bit that I've seen behind the curtain, they don't see the boundaries that say sovereign individual kingdom of God is one person kind of ideology. They don't see it that way. They don't see a boundary between a company, a corporation, you know, a secret society, a class of individuals, or a government. To them,
yeah, neither did the Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
Neither did the Bolsheviks, right? And like I say, there's nothing here that I see as that exceptionally new. I don't see the technology event horizon as being some stepping off into the stars. I don't. What I see is corporations, heads of corporations, massive corporations that span the globe, that wield the same power as countries themselves, and they're the ones that who are not constrained by the laws that we established in countries, right? I think, look, man, just call me an old-fashioned nationalist, right? Let's just wind it back. Let's take it back to national borders, and anything that we want to do over that, we'll do. We'll argue it over trade tariffs, etc. Okay, but this direction of which they're moving is, to me, it's antithetical to the rights of the individual, and the program that I see evolving is one of them understanding that there's a limit to what they can do with their supercomputing and their fancy molecular printing for biologics, etc. We're here to be the cattle or the animals on which they test, right?
Yeah,
And
but think of it this way. So think of it this way. So you're saying the rights of the individual would be plowed under. That's exactly the way they think. They're thinking in terms of the rights of the individual being plowed into the collective. So it's like an anthill. You would say an anthill works with castes, and no, there's no sovereign ant. Even the queen is kind of a slave to the colony. And they're thinking in terms of this emergent super colony or super organism of man. And so it is exactly as you say, the sovereign rights of an individual get plowed in, just like the sovereign rights of an ant get plowed in, so they become a soldier ant or some kind of drone. They each basically get folded into the super organism as an organ of that organism, and they lose their sovereign rights. I mean, it's like there's no cell in your body that has a sovereign right. That would be cancer. So
we have that at the national level. We have people that go in to be soldiers. We have people that go in to be doctors. We have people that go in.
This is where nations get dissolved. So it's a very old idea. The Freemasons have been working for God knows how long, since the Templar Knights. on abolishing nations. Nations were a stepping stone to this. So yeah, I mean, even like Karl Marx thought in terms of, say, the nation state will dissolve. Anarchists have always said the nation state should dissolve.
Over my dead body. That's
Well,
the position I'm going to take.
Well, it might come to that, but you see, here's the thing: the nation state doesn't work. So the reason it doesn't work is because of, if you look at, say, the mercantilists, the economists, say, like, I think it was Macaulay or Mackay or whatever, they had this idea that, well, Portugal makes all the lace. It was of like 18th century stuff. They said Portugal makes all the lace and France makes all the wine, and Britain makes the wool or money, and then everybody's happy. It's a little community of nations. Now that didn't work because the financial system and because of the monetary system made balance of payments deficits. So by the time you get to World War II and Hitler is completely misunderstood, mainly because the Zionists have made this cartoon out of it, because they really, the Zionists are really fascists. They're nationalist fascists. And so they've made a cartoon out of Hitler because they want to disguise the fact that Zionists are just as fascist as Hitler. So anyway, just grant me that. And if you go back and then look at the real Hitler, he's an economist. And what he's saying is, we have to invade Russia because basically we are building up this balance of payments deficit. It was a thing called the shrinking markets theory. And Hitler thought in terms of, Germany's industrial. So we have all the technology, and there's only so much technology that you can sell into the marketplace. Russia has all this agriculture and space. And what's going to happen is exactly what was happening, is that gradually Russia starts mechanizing and basically eventually drags in or takes over the shrinking markets for technology. Because Germany doesn't have anything but technology, then it means that as Russia emerges, it will have technology and agriculture and space. And therefore, Germany is going to be subordinated. That's what he was saying in Mein Kampf, but nobody reads Mein Kampf. So
there was a very specific component to his thinking, which was to get out of the world debt-based money system.
Yeah.
And to rely on the Volk, right, the people, and
but it's nationalism, so it's right.
So, and you know what, it worked really, really well, and they didn't like it, right? They didn't like the fact that Germany was able to turn themselves around after being crippled after the Versailles Agreement, and of course it was going to end in bloodshed, but it's always going to end in bloodshed, because this is well, you could say that in the modern context, what they tried to do was to nudge everyone into the medical model of emerging infectious disease. Okay, so everyone's gone down. If they'd managed to get everyone down that pathway, they might have walked into their globalist ideal. I would say right now, because they've swung and missed and committed right now, that they have to change tack, and that's what I'm sort of documenting.
Well, they haven't
every
missed
day.
yet. They haven't missed yet. There's a scenario they can get to where everybody knows that they're liars and they can't do anything about it, and then that's a worse scenario.
Well, yeah, but then anarchy rules, and then eventually.
No, it doesn't. No. My experience from South Africa is everybody just gripes and carries on. But it's actually a victory.
You haven't been to South Africa recently, then, right?
Oh no, I mean it turns into a disaster later. But in terms of apartheid, everybody knew that the government was lying. Everybody knew that the government was crooked and corrupt, and you still can't do anything about it. So it makes them doubly powerful. You see, it's one thing to say, "Oh, I'm a good guy, and I'm not really manipulating everything." That's one stage. But there's a worse stage where you say, I'm manipulating everything. I'm crooked as hell, and you can't do anything about it. Ha ha ha! And then that's much worse. it's much more powerful position than, you know, oh, don't expose me. This is like, expose me all you like. You can't touch me. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's the situation where we are now. Because
that's where we are now. I don't think they hit and missed. I think where Sophie's saying is basically we've hit and missed, and now they're super powerful.
No, because they've still got to reshape the markets. They've still got to reshape the cultures. They've still got all these things, all these what appear to be abstractions. They're not. They can be facets of a higher order dimensional space that we know that there, but we don't really see. We can't see it from the like an aerial view, if you like.
The superorganism, right?
Yeah, but this is the idea of superorganism. Just you can go look at any sort of physics or philosophy book that talks about emerging unitary field principles and how everything it's in a sort of state of flux, and you know it goes through periods of instability to stability. So, and you know the human societal interactions are just as concrete as the biochemical reactions, and probably a bit harder to predict, but they think that they're getting to a point where they can make that prediction. I would still counter with their first narrative failed. Why they rushed right now, we don't know. It might have been just Trump being a wild card. I don't know. Maybe Trump was
I
in
can
on it.
give you a good reason why they're doing it now. So this has been emerging for a long time, and what they've been gauging is, I don't think that they're as deterministic as you seem to think. Is they are looking at this in quite a neutral way, and the reason why they're doing this now is because of the limits to growth. And in '72, the Club of Rome predicted exactly where we are now. We're going exactly tracking. It's so spooky, you can't believe it. But the Macy Foundation, the cyberneticists, all those think tanks, they predicted exactly where we are now. They call it, actually, the scenario 20 years ago was called lockstep. And so the Rockefeller Foundation talked about lockstep. We're in lockstep. We are going, it's scripted down to the day almost. It's getting so ridiculous. I mean, it's scripted at least, I'm exaggerating, down to the year. 2020 was the breaking point, according to the Club of Rome. It's like, well, no surprise. There's a big pandemic in that thing. It's basically, it's virtually preordained. It's Nostradamus couldn't have done better. So it's a bit too good to be true. So certainly the guys are tracking it. But now, is there a guy who's saying, oh, damn, we're getting behind schedule. Can we move this up a bit? There's nobody doing that. They all working basically riffing off the superorganism as it changes. So as this kind of crucible changes, they're working with the reaction. They're not directing the reaction, but they're working in concert with it. And it just so happens that they predicted in 2020 the collapse happens and we pass all the tipping points, and they were right on cue. So it's it's going exactly according to script.
So you know, the predictions with respect to models and everything. Look, I agree with part of what you're saying, but there's a very specific component that we have to look at. And we had a brilliant example this week, an Atlantic Council, right? And Atlantic Council had put together a very flashy report that fits with the tabletop exercises that they'd been doing for decades, funded by all these Bill and Melinda Gates, whatever, you know, choose your demon du jour. And they you can see that they put this was their startup, this was their baby, and the idea of informatic control of the battlefield in this scenario, which, you know, whether they were predicting it or they initiated it, you can see in the paperwork and the lead up to it, in those desktop exercises, how they thought it was going to go. And like I say, it revolved around environment. Environment was never going to get people to move enough. Watching people around you get sick will. So will watching mass civil campaigns of untested medical therapists, right? That's going to be that's their break, or the way that they're going to pivot and break people. Now, the
more
job.
than that, then think of the financial reset that's coming. I mean, what we're going to see in Davos is the next Bretton Woods and the New World Order for finances. I would say finances is more important than medicine, but it's the same as like the Eco Health Alliance and all the stuff that you've been going. They're advancing on all fronts.
Yes.
And that's why you can, but the financial one is extremely important. The other one is war. Plain old war is a great.
Yeah, but they
way
win at that as well. They win at that, right? This is the thing. They're both long and short in this, right?
Yeah, agree.
And so if their behavioral nudging ideas didn't work, okay, and trust me, they were invested deeply in this. You can see that in the Atlantic Council documents, okay, and that doesn't work. And now they've got to pivot round. So now the Atlantic Council has positioned itself as being, oh, we're going to be the ones that do the challenge China to the investigation, etc. But Atlantic Council is linked to NATO psychological operations, and they're all linked. They're all linked to each other, and
it's all one giant psyops. It's all one giant psyops.
Yeah, but there's psyops that have real fallout for the people on the ground, right? Because if it suits their purpose right now to because people are non-compliant enough, they can't nudge people enough with their specialist impact officers and
no, I give my experience in South Africa gives them infinite credit. I think that the one failing, and it comes from individualism and specifically Western liberal individualist ideals, is we have that massively overinflated idea of the power of the populace. And it's because we've been spoiled for so damn long. They're all these entitled, privileged, liberal wets. And so they think, oh, you can't go against the people. Well, fuck you, you can. I come from South Africa, and I've seen 80% of the people fucked because they basically, just a small minority said, we can and we will. You can do nothing about it. And so I give no credence to this idea of resistance. There's no rebellion against.
No, it's not resistance even at this point. This survival, right? And it's the same. It's the same small group that did Africa in. Okay, so go look in the history books and look who was coaching and training Nelson Mandela. Okay.
Oh no, yeah, I know all about that. Yeah.
so and they're doing it the same again, and this is why I was talking at the beginning about this. Why this idea of this tech transfer is so important, right? And who's going to be controlling the flow of information? How much? Because that's the next gold rush. Right, and the big data is going to come off people, right?
But it's big tech. They're 5 big tech companies. They're 5 big fintech companies. They're 5 big pharmaceuticals. They're 5 big food companies. If 5 is the magic number, they're 5 big labels. Cabals come in like groups of 5. There's a good reason for 7 plus or minus 2 is the thing. But they all really, so these guys spend a lot of time on the same resorts in the same little desert islands away from all the public. When they go to the conferences and stuff, when they go to Davos, everything's decided. Davos is just a theater for all the cretins, but there's nothing goes into Davos that isn't decided beforehand. All these guys work, they're completely uncontentious. You'll never see contention. You will never see a fracture, split breakout in Davos. I mean, you have a potluck dinner and see what happens. All your closest friends will break up into an argument about left and right, and say, but it never happens in these big forums. How's that? I'll tell you how. It's because it's all been designed beforehand. The guys that basically, they're not really genuine. They're just playing a role there, and it's basically introducing people to what has been decided in all. Basically, all the contention happens on the golf clubs and in first-class dining and stuff. It all happens over a glass of wine. By the time it gets to Davos, it's decided completely, and it's not contentious. And I don't think people realize that. They go to Davos, and I mean, people like Rupert Reed go to Davos, and they're like, we're going to influence these guys. It's like, influence them how? You got to go back to the claret and the beef bourguignon that was had on some yacht somewhere in Corfu. That's where it's decided. It's way, way, way too late by the time you get into. So in turn, there's no rebellion, no resistance. People in Africa, they're better off than the average person in New York, London, or Tokyo. I don't think people realize that. Is that in these kind of environments, is people on the marshlands are always better off. If you go back to Europe and look at the great principalities and how they duked it out, and after the Enlightenment, the guys that really did well in all these history covering kind of escapades like the 30 Years War and things that were so influential, the guys that really do well are the guys in the March regions. We don't remember the guys in the March regions because they didn't do all this other shit. They just stayed quietly in the middle, trying to, a bit Blackadder-ish, like, just the rich are up, poor are down. I'm in the middle making a shit packet out of both of them. Those guys were the March regions. They were the principalities that weren't aligned. They all were, and so that's pretty much where Africans are. There are people in South America. There are lots of people there that are just like, we're not going to get too involved. You're not on this side or that side, but we're going to make hay out of both. And now people in New York, they're going to tell you exactly what you're going to do. They're going to lock you down. They're going to, maybe chip you or do the equivalent, any kind of tracking or biometrics and that. But basically, you are in a CAFO in London or New York. Now, these guys don't realize it. They think, well, these poor guys, these poor brown people are going to suffer with climate change. No, they're going to make out like bandits. It's you bastards. You're in a CAFO. You're in the middle of the gulag.
Yeah, and that's part of the EU smart city plan that they're pushing for. And
smart cities, dumb people. That's where they're headed.
Yeah, and then they flush their money through these behavioral nudge programs for various classes of people. That's how it's going to be, and this comes down to how much you want to engage with it. The problem is, I think that it will be virtually impossible, like the system right now, to fully avoid. You're going to need to have to go to a doctor. You're going to have to need to engage in some sort of civic duty.
Pay tax and military service. That's how they get you. Yeah.
And in that sense, you're at their whim, right? Now, I don't know what happens once the this current iteration runs out, right? Because it's, like you said, it's 9/11 again, only bigger this time. It's everyone in the world, and we get to we have multiple days to think about it. 9/11 was over in a few hours. Every day for over a year now, we've been waking up and trying to piece together what it is that's going on. And like I said, the fact that they could discombobulate so many people and fracture down so many different lines of tension or contention between groups just says to me that they've done their planning really well. Okay, but there's many a small holding in Europe and the United States, excuse me, and the Soviet Union, where they're not touched either. They live pretty agrarian lifestyles, and they're probably going to be all right. It's literally about whether you want to choose to be in that system.
I agree that you don't have a choice. Go ahead, sorry.
So I was wondering where you're going now. You're talking about an underground culture of resistance, and we talk a lot about that among us. We explore all the aspects of that. And how do you see that?
I think you'll have small sort of Bantustan's of people that, you know, you're going to be better together in a group, and whether that's digitally or physically, excuse me, the I don't know. I know that it's a sort of sounds like a bit like a narco syndicalist wet dream, but you know, move back to villages, move back and get a baker, get a butcher, get a farmer, get something approximating a rewarding lifestyle through the creation that was given to us, right? Because there's nothing in the technical world that they're pushing at me that I see as anything more enriching. They might stretch me out a few more years with respect to life, but at what cost? Okay.
Well,
And
congratulations, we finally got to the anarcho-primitivist in you. so if I were any label at all, it would be anarchist. So what I would propose to you is these guys are, you know, have one world government. The aim of anarchists is to overthrow the state. Our job's a lot easier if there's just one state. There are 145, maybe 146 if you count Taiwan, countries at the moment. That's a big job. If they all merge into one super centralized organism, we can overthrow them. So I don't think it's exactly a bad thing that these guys homogenize. It's like, dudes, centralize that and we got you. So I think that there's a lot of, I mean, eventually you've got to get back to what you're saying is basically the Amish got there first. But I don't think you can break away. In this culture, I called my series No Escape, and my video series is based on the very first one was said you can't escape financially, so you can't get rich and beat the system. That's a fool's errand.
No,
and the next one is the episode 2 was you can't break away from the system. You can't make a parallel polis, and you can't just go and make your Bantustan. And the reason is I saw this in South Africa is exactly what the Africans tried to do. And it didn't work because the whites needed labor in the mines. So if they need labor in the mines, they will get you out of your Bantustan. If you're sitting on a bit of land that's worth a damn, they will get you. So you can't break away. That's also a liberal shibboleth that they think, well, you know, we can go and do permaculture, and from so many reasons you can't. You're just talking from an urban liberal perspective. But if you go and, you know, I always wanted to do a cartoon. In fact, I think I might get Katsi to do this one actually. So, but I wanted to do, you know, all these kind of like peasant types on this, walking along this road with pitchforks and stuff, meeting this other group with backpacks and cell phones and stuff, and then all the guys with backpacks and cell phones, all these kind of millennials, we you know, they'd be saying like, oh, you know, we're going back to the land, and all these people, all the, you know, poor people with pitchforks is, oh, we're going to the city, you can't farm the land anymore.
But look, those dynamics have changed as well, just because they can automate a lot of stuff, right? And so where does human value come in? And so, you know, I'm skeptical.
It doesn't. That's why a lot of people are going to be on the wrong end of this meat grinder, because if you look at Bill Gates's world, it's an automated kind of dead world, and you need very few people. If you go back to like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, remember the plot of that movie was exactly this: is that Willy Wonka didn't like all these bastards who were, you know, basically getting a bit communist on him in his chocolate factory. So he got all these Oompa Loompas, which were kind of like Asian, just very obedient kind of little workers. And eventually at the end of the movie, he replaced them all with machines. And then Willy Wonka's dad got his job back fixing the machines. And I always thought, well, that's not a very happy ending, because you only need one guy to fix the machines. What about the other 999 workers that were working with his dad? He's like, well, I'll tell you, they made into fucking chocolate. That's what happens to them.
Well, Potentially not, because I think there's still this issue of the biotech coming in, and for all their supercomputing, etc., they need groups to test on. The bigger the groups, the better. And this is why I think we'll be around for a while yet. And it'll come down to choice. How much do you want to engage? Do you want the comfy life with all the gadgets, etc.? Then sign up and do the engage in the new medicine that's coming, because the people that want that data, right, are the people that have exactly the same as us, right? And I encourage everyone, please go watch Houstonic Live, senior analyst at Dell, and he laid this out very, very eloquently, that you're in a situation where those people have, give or take 10 years, depending on the healthcare that they're able to afford. There's not much difference between a peasant and the man at the very top. But what they do crave is they crave to live longer. They because of a form of technocratic atheism or agnosticism, feel that they want or need to live forever. That's why you hear so much about the transhumanism and the idea of loading consciousness into computers, etc. It's a common theme now, but the way for them,
the denial of death is not only among the atheists and the agnostics, it's in every human being nearly in our society. Death is a form of religions too.
Religion is a denial of death. It's just as much as a denial of death as transhumanism. In fact, it is a form of transhumanism. It's saying we get transformed into this ethereal being and we live at the right hand of the Father in this, purgatory forever. It's like, but it is also exactly.
It depends who you're listening to. What happens with death, right? So there are things that we can take.
Heaven is deadly, isn't it? Heaven is just a long extended meal at Stalin's table. This was like, I can't think of anything worse.
Is it? We don't. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe it's a sense of being, and being able to see down onto that higher organism that you're talking about, and that becomes infinitely hypnotizing.
Being part of that superorganism. So you see, since the Epic of Gilgamesh, the solution to the denial of death and this problem of immortality is to give up your individuality and merge with the superorganism. So you get life through nature and the continuation of life. So it's, in other words, you're only scared of death as an individual. If you stop thinking of yourself as an individual and you think of yourself integrated in nature and part of the ecosystem and part of the superorganism, then you live on as long as the superorganism does. And so that's the key to immortality. So people that are kind of pre-enlightened think of themselves as, oh no, I must hang on to my ego, I must be a sovereign individual. And then the solution in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the very first piece of literature, which the Bible is based on, by the way, it's just a kind of cargo cult of it, is the solution to that is Gilgamesh in the end realizes you can't achieve immortality. The thing is to just say, oh, fuck it, I'm going to die, get over it, and say, but anyway, I'll devote myself to my kids, to the greater world, because that is your ego identification and is much larger. So you get over your little ego identification, and then it gets transferred to this bigger identification with the universe. And that was the traditional thing. What we've done now is we have this immaturity, this little liberal thing where it's all about my ego and my identity politics and me. You say, well, you're fucked. Me's not going anywhere. Me's going to a meat grinder. You better start thinking about who this we is, because if you don't get onto we is going to be killed by all this individualism.
Yeah, so it's not a problem we haven't faced before, right? And whether we like it or not, it's
older civilization. It's older than shamanism. It's as old as our species. I think the Neanderthals had this problem.
Yeah. So those that have failed to see the immensity of the problem are essentially walking dead, and let the dead bury the dead is the saying.
Yeah, I think that's what Jesus was saying in that quote. This is exactly what he was saying. He's saying is you're going to be born again into a new kingdom, and the new kingdom is the bigger superorganism, and then basically the dead are going to just bury each other.
And like I say, if these cabals, whatever, the oligarch class, if they wanted us dead, we'd be dead, right? There's value to having human beings around and genetic diversity, and that is we're a platform on them for which to test their tech, right? And this is why I think that we're at such a critical break point, because they thought that they were going to be able to ram this program, the environmental program. Yes, big boy.
Mouse.
It's okay.
Daddy, his keyboard stopped working.
It stopped working. They need battery. Is he crying? I might have to dip out for a minute, guys. I would just. Can you tell him to come here? I forgot what we were saying right now.
Well, we could land it here and then just
yeah, try and pick it. What's the matter, big boy?
The mouse is gonna jug into of the big TV.
Huh? Your mouse not working?
And like when I pressed the button escape, it didn't show me the menu.
All right, Daddy'll fix it. Daddy fix it.
Well, we better let you go and do what's more important things.
Yeah, and look, I would just finish that conversation on the whole tenor of what I've been saying for weeks and months now is the change. Everyone knew it was coming. They all had different views on it. It's here. It's on your doorstep right now, and your job is to not get sucked in by it. And I would say, as we bust their narrative apart, what happens is that they'll just go to the short position, which is conflict, and they'll drag it out to and that's how they've always developed.
I would suggest infiltrating them and steering them, but the networks that they've created, the networks they've created can be their own worst enemy. So it's easier to hijack what they've already done. And I think that's where basically the meat and potatoes is.
But we're doing that right now. We're using their networks.
Exactly. Right? That's what our group is about hijacking all the work they've done. So basically, they've done all these systems of control, like social media. They can flip on them. They did for a little while. It wasn't very well organized, but in the Arab Spring. So all the mechanisms of control is you can always take over their mic, and then they're a bit screwed. They'll wish they never did set these systems up.
Well, I mean,
we can continue on that subject next time.
Yeah. Just, I mean, are we going into megalomania though? That's the thing. All right, guys, thank you. Sorry, it's so short, but. Okay,
No,
thank you very much.
Nice to talk to you as usual.
Yeah, thank you very much.